Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube. Like button, subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated. Let's get to it. It's the Cardiac Commanders here. A 17-16 win over the Colts. Last second dramatic fashion. I'm here with the voice of the Commanders, Bram Weinstein, to recap the third straight win. Bram, first of all, as a play-by-play guy, how was your voice at the end? How do you handle that?
It was fun. That was a really fun one. Sorry about the framing, bad lighting. You're catching me on 3 beers after the game, John. So
Right.
careful with what you asked this evening.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, we had a celebratory dinner after the game tonight. Everybody was kind of juiced up afterwards. It was a blast. There's kind of nothing like it when you come back in the 2-minute drill like that, especially when the offense hadn't really done much. So it was a bit of a surprise, honestly. And man, Terry McLaurin, he's a superhero, huh?
Yeah, we're gonna get to him, but it's funny because in the locker room, I told Taylor Heineken, like, maybe you should just throw a pick on the first play of the game because you'll probably then throw for like 400 yards because that's 2 games in a row. He's done this a lot in his career, and this is one thing I've always admired about him is that he throws a pick. It was a bad throw. You have Gibson open in the flat. Just take the layup there, and that's what the Colts give you all the time. So he forced it, pays for it, fine. Comes back with a field goal drive and a touchdown drive in dramatic fashion. But we'll get to more of that in a minute because we got to start with McLaurin. And this kid has certainly, I don't like, we talked about this last week where I talked about with Nikki after the game and just like his ability, or maybe it was with you after the game.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It was you. Sorry about that. But we talked about McLaurin after that third down play, the way he attacked it and how he had to work on that in his career. And then he goes and makes a play like this, and it's the same thing. This is something he worked on. This is why that guy earned the contract he did, is not because he makes that catch, it's because he worked to put himself in position to make that play. And then he goes and does it. And he's got such humility. And he's always talking about how he said, even after the game, I can just pinch myself, the fact that I'm standing here talking about this, that I'm the guy they're trusting.
Yep.
And it's just like you run out of words to describe this guy, but it's funny, Bram, because he may never make an all-pro team or anything like that. I don't know, but he's a special guy here.
Well, I mean, when you start making plays like this, then it starts making the rounds.
Yeah.
And that play is going to get shown on loop, for the next 24 hours. It's one of the catches of the year. It saved their season again. It's 2 weeks in a row. He's been on the receiving end of saving their season. And in this one in particular, I mean, if you've seen this replay, it's incredible where that's not even the route he was running. Like he ran a different route and then it's a scramble play and then he's just running down the field and Heineke chucks it up to him because he trusts him. And the guy makes a play on a corner who was the defensive player of the year not too long ago. Like last week it was against Jair Alexander and this week it's against Stephon Gilmore. So there are 2 players on this team that I think because they don't win a lot and they haven't, they're not a high profile team or they're not high profile for the right reasons for sure. But there are 2 players on this team, him and John Allen now, they're not just, Pro Bowl type players. They're all pro players now, like best at their position type players now. And I'm not sure that, that they're going to get that kind of notoriety, but they belong in that conversation because he's making plays that win games at the end of games. And that catch today was spectacular. After the game, our producer was like, did you like that one better than remember the one in the Chargers game, first game of the year last year, he made the one-handed crazy catch. And I'm like, well, that was an amazing catch, but that was in the first quarter of the first game of the season. The catch he made today won the game for them. I'm like, I would put this one goes up with the one in Atlanta last year where he was in the middle back of the end zone. Same thing with Heineke. Fourth quarter, needed 2 drives to come back and win. And he just threw it up to him and he gets into like a tussle with a corner in the back of the end zone, just comes up with the ball. This guy, I don't have words for him either. He's best receiver they've had in a very, very, very long time. If he had, stability at quarterback, let alone Pro Bowl caliber play at quarterback, I don't know what his numbers would look like right now. and he's on track to pass Gary Clark as the most prolific receiver in the first 4 years of any receiver's career here. And that includes Hall of Famers like Art Monk and Charlie Taylor and people like that. And I'm hoping that he starts getting the notoriety league wide. And I really think it's largely because this team plays in the 1 o'clock window every week and they're not a high profile team and people just don't they just don't know. And this guy is as reliable and as clutch as any receiver they've had in recent memory.
Well, my point too in that is, regardless of whether he does or doesn't, he's a special player here.
Yeah.
And he is so right for this team. Like, he gives them a chance. And when you have guys like that, and I go back before the draft, and because I'm an Ohio State guy, I watched him in college. I knew his reputation from Ohio State. I did not expect this. It would be a complete lie. But what I knew about him, he's the kind of guy, if you're trying to change your culture, you draft. Because I remember I referred to him as in February of that year as a culture changer, and that's what he is. So if you have a guy like that who gets a contract like he did, and then comes back and continues to attack his weaknesses like he does, and then makes these kind of plays, that sets an unbelievable tone. Now there's more that's needed than Terry McLaurin, but when you have guys like that, and John Allen is very similar, they get these big contracts and they play better.
Yes.
That's rare. We're used to seeing the Dana Stubblefields of the world or Albert Haynesworth. They get the big deal and you come here and you flame out. It's why you need to reward your own, and they have.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
You get to know these people. Like, they work with you for 4 years. They earn it. And that's why you pay your own. You draft well, you pay your own. That's how you get a really good franchise. And then you fill in the blanks with free agency. The free agency shouldn't be done to fix your team. It should be done to fill in holes that you have. Terry McLaurin and John Allen are core players. If this team's ever going to turn it around and be a contender, they are. They're core reasons why that's going to happen. Thought today was really interesting, not just because he was back in Indianapolis and so much was made of him being in his hometown. Paris Campbell's on the Colts. Paris Campbell was his teammate at Ohio State. Paris Campbell was drafted higher than him in the same draft that he was. And it's not to say that Paris Campbell's not a pretty good player. He is. He ain't Terry McLaurin.
No, well, he's not. And Paris was never the kind of route runner that Terry was either. And that was like, I knew that, but Paris is a playmaker, and we saw that today.
Yes.
But then you throw Curtis Samuel there. I'm going to my Buckeye roots, but you throw Curtis Samuel out there, who had some big plays on 4th down today too. He made some big catches as well. And it's just that McLaurin makes those in those moments. And it's not like he's wide open. Like, he was open. It's just that Taylor couldn't get it all the way over Gilmore's head. But it's the plays he's making. The Jair Alexander, it's highly contested.
Yes.
You have to win that by fierce desire. That's it. And even the one that he caught today, like, he's going upward. I'm like, he's going to catch that. But does Gilmore get his hands on it all? Does he have to wrestle away? He made sure he didn't do it. And that's what I appreciate about him, is that what he said is, because I even asked him after the game, you say you work on these contested, like, what did you do today that you weren't doing earlier in your career? And he talked about the way he has to tuck the ball and roll and on all that. It's like little details that have made a good receiver. And you get a lot of guys who sometimes try to work on their game and enhance their game by doing things that they really aren't capable of doing, or working things they're not capable of really doing, but what he does is work on things that, like, okay, you need to come back for the ball better. Well, you can do that. It's just being aggressive and attacking it. How do you do that? And the same in those contested catches. Like, he can't make himself taller, but he can handle those situations better. And it's, again, that's why I think this guy is special, because all those qualities, teammates gravitate to him. Just watch the guys around him. And the other thing is, Bram, like, watching him. So he leaves the press conference today. We're in the press conference to talk to him. He goes outside. You hear this big cheer. So a few of us scurry out of the press conference. We had Taylor Heineken coming up. Get out of the press conference from Heineken. And then it's all Terry and his family and friends. And the hugs and the tears and the joy and the smiles and the laughter with all of them was cool to see, because of who he is and what he means to them and what they mean to him. And it was such a special thing to see, but it's because of the kind of guy he is.
He's easy to root for. I mean, like, that's why I'm so glad he's on this team. He's easy to root for. Like, he's not a diva. Like, he should be on this team. He should be. He's not. He's as down to earth as you're going to find. Like, the first thing he did when he got that contract was write a letter to the fans saying, I'm going to earn every penny of it.
Yeah.
Who does that? Like, who does that? He's in his 20s. Like, who does that? he's been everything and more. And like this is not an again, we're gonna talk about Heineke, I'm sure. Like it's not an indictment of Wentz. It's like when you need to make a play, your quarterback needs to trust the people they're going to go to. Heineke, there were a few people on this team that he has the experience with. McLaurin's one of them. This is 2 weeks in a row when something had to happen, when he's going to take a shot somewhere. Last week it was Kenny Clark was in his face. He's got to throw to a spot. Where's he going to throw it to? He throws it towards McLaurin. He trusts him. Like this week, he had to make a play. He had a little extra time, turns into a backyard play. I think Heineke likes that a little bit. Ice in the veins. Where's he throw the ball? Terry McLaurin. Like, I think you'll see in the coming weeks, JD McKissick may see that pass a couple times. I think you'll see Logan Thomas. Didn't happen today, but I bet you'll see it because Heineke trusts these people and there's good reason to do it. And McLaurin rewards them. I mean, honestly, like to me, well, that catches play of the year so far for them. Save their season. Might be play of the year in the NFL, frankly. Save their, especially if they end up somehow getting into the playoffs. It's play of the year.
Listen, and let's go to Heineke for a second here because, yes, this isn't an indictment on Carson Wentz. It's just that what Heineke adds. So the fourth down and one play on that drive, it's his legs that keep it alive. He starts like there's nothing open, starts up in the pocket, and Yannick Ngakoue is right there. He somehow gets away from him and escapes out to the right. And on the run, he keeps the play alive, keeps his eyes down the field, and he finds Curtis Samuel. It's the legs that get him out of there. I don't, now maybe on that play, they run a different play with Wentz. I don't know. And again, it's not, Heineke's doing a good job right now. And I think it's
Yes.
and this is what I thought, like 2 weeks ago, watching Chicago. And my thought was even right after the game, his lack of mobility is limiting the offense. And I think Heineke's mobility is helping it. And that was a situation. And then even on that pass to McLaurin, what I really like from Heineke is the poise that he showed. And, he stayed within the pocket. He could have broken contain. He didn't because he didn't need to. Instead, he backed up. So we got a better all around view of the entire field. And that's where he throws to McLaurin. But it's because of how he handled himself in the pocket that got him there. And so, like, there are things that kid does that do help. We always say this. We know the flaws. We know he's limited. We know what his future is and all that. Blah, blah, blah. He helped him win the game again. I mean, that kid's got something too. And it's funny, Bram, because like I tell
His
people,
last 10 games, he's 7-3. I mean, like,
yes,
at some point, and I know he beat Sam Ellinger today, but last week he beat Aaron Rodgers. Last year he beat Tom Brady. Last year he beat Russell Wilson. Last year he beat Derek Carr. Like, and the 3 losses were when the team had half of their roster because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, at some point, I think, I love this dude. Like, and I've been saying this for a long time that I love this dude. I like the grit he plays with. I think he just has a feel for the game that you can't teach. You pointed out a couple things that he did on his own that's not drawn up that way, that he just does naturally. This is, they're playing by the skin of their teeth here. So that's never going to consistently work out. And I see the flaws like everybody else, his height, his arm strength, all that stuff. I also see all the pluses. And what I'm really tired of talking about are the things that he's not, instead of just talking about what he's doing. Like, the guy's winning every week, coming back from 2 scores down in the fourth quarter. He's done this multiple times now. The guy is cool, calm, collected, has to make plays, converts 4th downs with under 2 minutes to go. Like, honestly, I thought the coaching staff did him no favors at the end of the first half with the way that they conducted the 2-minute drill, which I'm sure wasn't a big story, but should have been.
Conservative.
Should have been. Like, the way that they handled the clock at the end of the first half, like, I think they need to start trusting this guy a little bit more to make the plays, even if they're not exactly how they want them to go. Like, the guy has whatever it is, it's there in him. I can tell he's not Pat Mahomes or Josh Allen. I'm not pretending he's the greatest quarterback of all time. But for them right now, what he means in the locker room and how he's performing, I think people need to start focusing on that and stop focusing on all the limitations that supposedly he has.
But he doesn't have a good arm, Bram. I'm kidding. To that point, like Rivera after the game, one of the things he said is, that they are, and you said this too, like they're trying to look at the things they do well and not the things they can't do and
Yes.
enhance those. And he was speaking about the team, but to your point on Heineke, yes, that is what he does. And there are things that he can do to help. And I go back to knowledge of the offense. It allows you to get the ball out faster. And then also the ability to make plays with your legs and extend plays. And we saw that with Ellinger today too
Yes.
for the Colts. You know, if you can do that, then you give yourself a chance to at least make some plays that can push you in position to win.
I mean, I think you agree with this. I mean, look around the league at all the quarterbacks that, are kind of traditional pocket quarterbacks. They're getting run out of the league right now. Like, some mobility is necessary. You don't have to be Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray, but you do need to be able to move, because if you can't, you're a sitting duck right now, the way teams are playing defense. So mobility really matters. And I talked to you about this, and I've talked to others about this, and I said this on my show, and I'll reiterate it. Like, after watching, I was unfortunately wasn't able to do the Tuesday night show with you because I've been sick for like a week and a half. So I had to bail on you last week. But like, after rewatching Green Bay last week, there were more pressures in that game than there were in any other game. Like, the offensive
Yes.
line did not hold up.
No.
Guess what the difference was? Like, the quarterback who can move a little bit knows the offense pretty well. And again, this isn't an indictment on Wentz, because the bottom line is this: the more I watch them, the more I realize, and this goes back to something I'm not going to harp on, but like, they made a mistake in personnel in the offensive line. It's hurt them, right? And they've tried 8 million combinations, mainly because of injury, not because of performance, but mainly because of injuries. They've tried a lot of different combinations. I'm pretty convinced that there is no combination that's on this team that's going to be really good. It might be effective enough, but it's not going to be really good. And therefore, like, especially off the Green Bay game, to me, I don't see a path by putting Wentz back in. Like, I think they need someone who's more mobile, whether they win or they lose. And I don't know if that's the decision they're going to make, but I would think that if they're being, reasonable about it, I think that they know that, like, Wentz is put in a very tough position because of what's in front of him. And Heineke gives them the option to run an offense that has a vulnerability in front of it. And I don't know that Wentz can really create the way that Heineke can right now. If they fix the offensive line and you want to have an argument about what the future is at quarterback, I'll hear it. But for the here and now, over the next, definitely 2 weeks and then beyond, I don't know that they have much of a choice. And if he keeps winning, he'll make the choice very easy for them.
Oh, listen, if he keeps winning, there is no choice. If he wins one of these next 2 games, there's no choice. They'll stick with him. Period. You know what I mean? You can't go back, because you listen to the teammates, what they say, you read the locker room, you're winning. And if you think that he is contributing to that, why would you change to go
Well,
back to
yeah.
try and keep building something? And that's not to say that, let's say they have a really good finish and Wentz goes back in at some point and plays pretty well, he can still be your guy of the future. There's if that's what you want, because you get him more comfortable in this offense, and
Yeah.
you actually build the interior of the offensive line to help him and
I
to
would
help
love to
both of them.
I would love
But
to talk to Rivera about the 85 Bears and the Bears teams he played on, because Jim McMahon's not in the Hall of Fame. Jim McMahon wasn't the reason why the Bears were great. He was a good quarterback, but like, they had an incredible run game with Walter Payton and others, and they had an incredible defense for a couple of years. And like, Jim McMahon was probably perceived as limited in some way, but he was really well liked in the locker room. I'd love to talk to him about it and see if there is a
I have.
comparison here. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have Pat Mahomes on this team, where it makes it really easy to sit there and go, well, we're set at that position, and this guy might go win games on his own because he's so, uber talented. The Chiefs, the Bills, and a few select others are very lucky to have that. Everyone else is in this boat of trying to find the guy, and you can find flaws in everybody's game if you want to, even with the guys who might have the huge arm strength or this thing that you want them to have. I just know what I see with this guy, and I've loved him from like last year. I just think you can win with him, and I see how the players relate to him, and that matters. It really matters. They buy into what he's doing. They've got his back. They trust him. McLaurin goes and gets the ball for him. They will block for him. This defense knows they're never out of a game. And there's something about that to me is priceless. Like, honestly, it is. And I see he's got limitations, but and so does everybody else. Who doesn't?
Well, and I think the one thing that I think it, the one thing that you and I see too, and when you're in there talking to players, it's how it's not just what they say about him, it's how they say it. It's how they light up when they talk about him. It's how, if you ask him like, well, hey, what do you think about, he just has it, right? I wrote a story about him for this weekend for ESPN.com, and it was just about like he's a regular dude, right? That's kind of what people would say. But I was talking to Tress Way about this, and he just said he's got that it factor. And I said, if you just watch him on film, like you watch him on the coach's film after a game, right? We'll watch it. There's no emotion to it. It's really just watching film. It's different than if you feel the presence, right? And that's one thing that he was saying, like you can feel what he means to them when you're on the sidelines, when you're in the huddle, or if guys in the huddle will say that. And again, like, when he's bad, he can look really bad. We know that. All right, we've seen it. But the key is they're responding to him. And like the issues they have on offense are offensive line. They need to get the run game consistent. And yeah, there are things like I felt like outside of really one throw, and maybe there were some others, but the interception, that was a really bad decision to me.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
otherwise, this is a game that you had to manage the game because that is a good Colts defense. Yeah, that's that's a cool thing about him though, because even last week, this goes back to the regular guy mentality that he has, and just I think both he and McLaurin are like this, where they just kind of feel like McLaurin will always say, "I don't take this for granted." He wants to be a role model. He wants to inspire people, and I think they both will talk about like their moments when they were kids and what it meant to them to see a Marvin Harrison or to be like Taylor would
Yeah.
be at a camp and see these like the players and get their autographs and all that. And for them to be in position to do that, it matters to them. And with Heineke after the game last week, and I was walking outside the press room with him, and I said, like, do you know, like, you're aware you get these bonuses, these $125,000 every time you win? He goes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
He's aware of
And of
that.
course he knows. Of course he knows. Listen, if
Yeah.
I got $50 a week for writing a better story, I'm going to know it. 125K, yeah, you know it. But what was cool to see is the joy that he describes, like, yeah, he goes, every time I get this, I buy myself a new pair of Jordans. Like, it's a cool thing for him to do that. He doesn't take it for granted that he can do this.
Yeah.
So I think that, there's the appeal to that. When you watch him just walk through the locker room. He's not an imposing guy.
No, he's
And like
not.
he doesn't
No.
have he doesn't have some sculpted body like, he doesn't look like he's cut from quarterback central casting, right? But that's part of the
So
appeal.
what? Yeah. So
Yeah,
what? I mean,
I know.
like,
Yeah, it's the
it's
appeal
funny.
though.
Like,
It's the
you
appeal.
asked me like initially when we started talking, like, what, how do you feel after the game? And I never want to make these things about me, but I'm grateful too. I
Me
totally
too.
relate to this. Like, it's never a day when like I go in and get ready to call one of these games that I am not the first thing that happens when I walk into the stadiums. I'm just grateful to be there. I know how lucky I am to be there to do that. And there are days like today where they do what they did today in the fourth quarter, and it reminds me how lucky I am. And it was really, I mean, it was a very special thing to see that today, to see him throw that pass to McLaurin at that stage of the game and be able to kind of live it, kind of with them. Just amazing. I mean, it really was amazing. And now this team, as they have, and I know it's skin of their teeth every week, but like they have 3 years in a row under Ron Rivera, somehow righted themselves and they've given themselves a shot. And the unfortunate part for them is the division is acting so ridiculously dominant this year
It's
that there's no
amazing.
real path to winning the division, but there's a real path to making the playoffs if they're going to continue to play like this.
Mhm.
And so I'm excited for the second half ride with
Well,
them.
they're in that wild card. There's three wild cards. They're in that hunt big time.
Right now,
And
the entire division would be in the playoffs,
yeah, I mean,
which is silly, but it's true.
right. And they're 2 games behind the Giants, 2 games behind the Cowboys. You got two big games coming up, and we can get to some of those on Tuesday because you Minnesota and Philly. This isn't going to define their season because you can come back from that, but this certainly can. You split these games, you put
Yeah.
yourself in a different category to me. If you want to be that serious team, you can still recover, but still. I do want to talk about too, though, the defense and John Allen. And, there were plays that he made. And here's the other thing, Bram, with the defense, that one of the things that this team, and I really like their safeties, Derek Forrest, Cam Curl, and I think Bobby McCain's done a nice job. The versatility of that group is what I like. So today, without Cole Holcomb, they had to be creative defensively. And I know they gave
Yep.
up some big plays on defense. We saw that. Okay. But you are missing your linebacker. So they gave Cam Curl the green dot. He was calling the plays. He's relaying the stuff in. He'd be up in the box in the Buffalo nickel, sometimes in a linebacker role. But they were also using Bobby McCain in their 3 safety set in the
Yep.
slot. And that was it was the most he's played there. But he played it early in his career. But it was the ability to do that and to mix and match with these guys. I think that made a big difference too. And it was
Yep.
it's a good job of using your personnel.
Yeah, I thought so. They're very thin at linebacker. I was very concerned with Holcomb being out. Holcomb feels like he's in on every tackle. And, the strength of the Colts, especially with the decision that they made, you had to assume that it was going to be a heavy run game. And that's a world-class running back that they have. And I thought, tip of the cap to Jack Del Rio for really the last 4 or 5 weeks, really. They've been very, very good. They're giving up very few long plays. Long conversions are rare against them when they were historically bad at it. Thought McCain was very good today. Asked to do a lot of different things today. Not surprised by Curl. I've grown accustomed to him being used in versatile manners and coming through for them. And in my opinion, at times can be like the second best player on their defense, and maybe the most important part of their defense. And I think he was a big, big absence the first couple of games of the year when things were kind of going wrong early for them when he wasn't playing. I thought he was a really big deal that he wasn't out there. So, I think I agree with you. Like, I think they did a very good job. I do think the Colts played into their hands a little bit. They had the opportunity here if they were willing to kind of unleash this guy a little bit. The big problem, and I was with you too, that this is a toss-up. One, because they're kind of mirror images. They have a lot of the same problems and a lot of the same similar strengths. One of the things that I thought was problematic in trying to get ready for them is there's just kind of no tape on this guy Ellinger. You just really kind of don't know what you're going to do. And all these people are telling me, pregame, oh, they love his arm and oh, they love his gutsiness and oh, they think he's really accurate. Well, he threw one pass down the field the entire game. So Washington comes out here with 5 defensive linemen, 1 linebacker. They're rotating these safeties. It's like they're demanding. They're screaming at you, we're not going to let you run the ball, or we're not going to let you run it effectively. And the Colts really didn't seem to adjust to much of that at all. I also think they were extraordinarily conservative in a couple of spots where if they really trusted this quarterback, they could have let him try to put the game away late on the 4th down where they kicked a chip shot field goal instead of going for it. And I maybe this might be controversial to say this, but like on 4th and an inch, I know you're at your own 35-yard line, but to punt it back to you have Jonathan Taylor on your team to punt it back to them with, in a 1-score game where if you get it, like you could at least make them use all their timeouts. And if you don't get it, they still have to score a touchdown. And if they do, there should be time on the other side of it. It read like they just didn't totally like they made this change, but didn't totally trust this guy. And Washington went, we're missing one of our best tacklers. We're one of the most reliable players. We're adjusting to it. And our adjustment is to put all these guys across the line of scrimmage to not make you run the ball. Thank you, Indianapolis, is kind of the way I feel about it. Like, I don't think that they made this change, but didn't truly trust the guy that they handed the ball over to.
Well, I think they also didn't trust that Washington would go down and score either. And I think they trust their defense.
I agree with that, but still,
no, I thought
they
they might go for it.
They took no chances with their offense. Like right. None. Like zero. It took them till the 4th quarter to throw a pass that went more than 10 yards in the air.
Yeah,
like,
and
why would you change quarterbacks if you're not willing to even let him try a pass down the field?
Where I felt like he helped them was he could extend plays, and we saw that. And this is one of the things I want to get into. We only got about 5-6 minutes left, but it was after the game, Rivera was actually seemed to be pretty frustrated. Very happy with the win, sure, but he was frustrated because he felt like there were guys who were, quote, like basically just doing their own thing out there. He said that's crap. And somebody asked him, you seem frustrated. He goes, yes, he is, because he knows that you can't get away with some of what they did today against better teams. There was
what he
a
was
lack.
talking about? Because I didn't know what he was talking about.
Well, I want to go back and look at it, but there were times where I felt like the gap rush discipline was bad. And there were times where I felt like it looked like maybe up front where there's some guys trying to get into gaps where they shouldn't have been. I don't know if that's what he's talking about, because those were some plays where that was showing up consistently to me, where he was able to find gaps and creases in the pass rush to get out of there. Now, that may not be what he's talking about. I don't know, but it was telling that that's where he was going a few times with it, because I think he knows that if you want to beat Minnesota, you want to beat Philly, you can't play the same way and do that. And I actually I like that he's putting that demand out there. Now I know that you're funny because you hear some people, well, do that for the coach. You're holding the players accountable. There are things you can ask them to do. If you're asking them to do X, then they need to do X. If they don't like doing it, then find someone else who will. Because you can say it's the wrong thing to ask them. No, it's not. To stay in your gap is not the wrong thing to ask somebody. So, but it looked like that happened a few times. I need to go back and watch it before I go much more on that and find out more what he was talking about. But I did think that was telling. I did like how John Allen played, made a huge stop inside the red zone, couple big stops, he did not force that fumble, but he was right there. Another really nice job. I liked him that, I think it was was it a fourth down? With the third, I forced the field goal. But it was all, he beats Quentin Nelson, just pure desire. I also, Bram, we need to talk for a minute about the special teams. And I think they've been very good the last few weeks. And when you're playing these close games, you've got to get that effort. And I talked to Jeremy Reeves about this after the game, and his thing was, he said, we're a very competitive unit. He goes, you got guys like Percy Butler, Christian Holmes, David Mayo, guys who are competitive out there. And he said it rubs off. And I think they have been doing a good job in turning the field position and winning that battle. Tressway's been awesome. So, those are just a couple more things. So if you want anything you want to close with.
Tressway had one today that they got a sack or a penalty. I don't remember. I think it was a sack inside the 10, forced a kick from the end zone. Tressway killed one.
Yes.
And Kiki Cutie ran back 20 yards from where he was lined up to field the punt. And Tressway has been a weapon for them for a long time. He was a real weapon.
Been really good with it too.
And it is these moments that you remember in a 1-point game that you go, that was really important. Christian Holmes made a mistake early in the year. He has made up for it and then some as a gunner for them. Percy Butler's made plays. They've gotten lucky with a couple of muff punts. The special teams, they had an anomaly aberration game where they had I think it was Detroit, where they had a really bad, that was the everybody game.
It was surprising.
They were as bad as the two units. The offense couldn't do anything. The defense kept giving up big plays, and the special teams just made a bunch of crazy errors in the same game. It was just everything went wrong at the same time, and they've been pretty good since. Really good the last few weeks. And I guess if you want to complain about one thing, could they use a little more juice on the punt return? Yeah, I think they could. Yeah, and maybe that's something they can decide about. And maybe it's something they would have thought to turn over to Jahan Dotson, but because of the injury, there's just no realistic.
Yeah, they're not going to do that. They would only go to Dotson in a situation where they're kicking from their own end zone. You want a big play, and you can get it the 50.
Yeah, but now at the hamstring, I don't even think they'd risk it.
No. And, again, this goes back to somehow you need to keep DeAndre Carter here. He was a good spark for them. It's all gone, but that was another mistake in the offseason. But there you go. So 3 in a row. We're going to talk more about all this on Tuesday night, 7:30 Eastern time, the live YouTube stream. Check us out there because we're going to talk about this, and then we can dive into more of the Minnesota Philly and looking ahead. What do we really know about this team at this point? And Bram and I'll get a chance to go back and watch the game, fill you in on more stuff, and have a good chance to answer your questions. And if you what the concerns you obviously still have, because everybody's got concerns. 3 in a row, but it's not perfect. So there you go. Bram, thanks for joining me. And again, Tuesday night, 7:30 Eastern time, live on YouTube stream. We will talk to you next time.